struck me recently how one of the most widespread emotions at the moment is fear, and how it shows itself in so many different ways. Anxiety, stress, busyness, laziness, depression, finding distractions, turning to alcohol or other substances, tears. The list could go on. And it's caused by so many factors at the moment as well. Fear of death, a fear of illness, fear of economic difficulty, a fear of failure, a fear of others, a fear of ourselves, a fear of loneliness, a fear of relationship breakdown, fear of letting people down. For me, a lot of my fears revolve around my kids or letting people down, at work or in our community generally. But the other morning I read a story which helped me to bring things into perspective. Or actually, more than the story, it was a kid's song that I remembered associated with that story. But before you hear that, I'll have to explain the story. It's a story that we find in Numbers chapter 13 in the Bible. The Israelites had come out of Egypt. They'd been freed from slavery there and had come to the border of the land that God had promised them. So God asks Moses to send people into the land to spy it out, check it out, see what was there. And so Moses chooses a leader from each of the 12 tribes and sends them off. They thoroughly explore the land and then they come back and give a report. The land is incredibly good, with giant grapes and flowing with milk and honey. But the people are huge and terrifying and live in big fortified cities. At this point in their report, they're interrupted by Caleb, one of the 12. He tells them they should go, conquer the land. A disagreement ensues between 10 of the spies and the other 2, Joshua and Caleb. The 10 think that the people are far too strong and that there is no way they could ever conquer them. Joshua and Caleb, though, insist this: the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. Ultimately, in the story, the Israelites choose to side with the 10, and they let their fear of those people make their decision for them. Because of this incident, none of the people that had left Egypt ever entered the promised land except for Joshua and Caleb. And this was when the children's song came to mind, and you might have heard of it. 12 men went to spy out Canaan, 10 were bad, 2 were good. Now I know I'll get taken the mick out of for singing, but children's songs are so good at reminding us the core of these stories. But it made me think, why were the 10 bad? They had legitimate fears. But it seems to me that it came down to how they reacted to the fear. Whilst they all acknowledged that the good and the scary in the land, the 10 allowed their fear to control them and control the advice that they gave to the people. Meanwhile, the 2 were led by their trust in God. They were controlled not by their fear of the people in the land and what they were capable of, but by what God was capable of. One way the Bible describes this attitude of putting our trust in God above everything else is when it describes people as fearing God. Proverbs 1 verse 7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." So as we live through a time when there are so many legitimate fears, let's acknowledge that fear, but not be controlled by it. Let's make time daily to focus on what God is capable of, so that we don't get overwhelmed by what a pandemic and all its consequences are capable of. Let's be like the 2, not the 10, and lead people towards goodness and the fear of God. and not towards the fear of things far inferior to God and his everlasting kingdom.